Hello everybody, I'm Lisanne Miller with W, Cushing and Company, and welcome. This podcast is on tools of the trade. So we're going to go over a lot of tools today, a lot of different techniques, and thank you everybody for sending in your suggestions. So we're going to start, when we start with the tools of the trade, we're actually going to start with the strip sizer. The strip sizer is a great tool. It's metal, not plastic. And, you know, we all put our noodles in a big bunch and we want to know what size we're cutting. So if you want to know what size you're cutting, then you're just going to go like this and know, oh, I've got a 6 here. Or, what is this? Is this a 3, a 4, a 5? Oh, look, it's a 4. But a strip sizer isn't just for strip sizing. It's great when you're going to do lettering on a rug. So for lettering on a rug, here's what we're going to do. Here's the lettering, and I don't know what size cut I want to use. So if I lay the strip sizer down, I can tell I can use a 7. An 8's a little bit larger, but I decided to go a little larger and I used an 8. But then I want to know how much distance this is. So if I lay it down this way, I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there's 7 in that space. So I know I have the 1 and then I have 7 across, 7 loops to go across. This works really well when you want to figure out what size you want and what's going to cover in a certain area. So the strip sizer is a great tool. It's handy, it slips in your tool basket or in your tool bag, and it just works really, really well. I love to use it. I love to figure out if I'm going to use the sizes or how I'm going to use it and go from there. So here is our strip sizer. That's our first tool. Second tool everybody's asked about is our magnets. This is our Christmas magnet, and they are very, very strong. There's a magnet on the back, and then a second magnet. And I'm being very serious. If you have a pacemaker, you cannot use these magnets or wear it as a pin. So you put the first piece on the top, and you put the second magnet on the bottom. Oops. And then it sticks. So I have the little magnet on the top, the bigger one, and boom. It's going to stick right there. Now, it will not stick with the Hartmans because they're brass, okay? So you can't put your Hartman on there, but if you need that strip sizer, it's going to hold the strip sizer too. Now, the scissors that I've put on here are the applique, the small pointed applique. Now, these are not our long ones, these are our smaller ones. They're great if you're going to go down into a point, if you're going to do the sculpting that we've gone over before, when you need to get really down in there, if you're going to cut for just say a Proddy or a wool tree, these work really great. They're sharp, they're small, they're compact, and they'll fit in for you. So these are a great addition. They are a little small in here, so you've got to be careful if you have bigger fingers or arthritis, but they work perfectly. The next thing we're going to talk about is how to keep your strips organized. Mine always look like a rat's nest too. So this is called a noodle roll. And that's because we call these noodles and not worms, because to me the beeline looks like a pasta maker, being Italian. And so this will organize if you're doing in shades and colors. If you're going to go to a hook-in or a class and your wool is cut, these are snaps, and all you do is lay it in here, and then you snap it, and it holds it. Then you tie it, you can roll it, that's where the noodle roll comes in, and you can tie it and stick it in your project bag, just like that. When you get there, your colors are all laid out for you. The other way to organize your noodles is with a strip sorter. The strip sorters are great because they control it, okay? You get a little bit of each in here, and you can write on these with pencil, erase, and rewrite. So again, if you're going someplace, you put your colors where they go on your pattern, and then you stick it in your bag, and they don't get all knotted up like this. And in the strip sorter package, there's quite a few different, strip sorters in one. So you can have it for different projects. Also, if you're going to do in values here, like in here, you can put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The same you can write on this, although you can't erase on the bias tape. The next thing we're going to go over is our Mr. Snowflake, Holiday Sprinkles, and our flower wool. Everybody has asked, how do these hook? What do they look like? We know they're a little bit different than the other wools that you've seen, so I decided to cut some up. I cut them in an 8. And I'm going to show you what I cut so you can understand. I cut the salvages. I know that a lot of people don't like to hook with the salvages, but they do have a little extra rib, a little extra depth. So I did cut these off of the salvages, and I'm going to hook the Holiday Sprinkles first so you can see the color. So the Holiday Sprinkles I'm going to use right here, and I'm going to hook it in. Now to me, oh, I didn't lock down my pattern with my Snapdragon, so it's not locked in. There we go. We got to lock it, and look how tight that goes. So now we're going to start the Holiday Sprinkles, and to me the Holiday Sprinkles makes a great background. It would make a great pale poinsettia. It's a great border, and you get a little bit flecks of color. Here comes the green and the yellow. Okay. And it would make a great border around a stocking as well. And so here we are with that, with all the colors coming up. Now this is a little more muted than the real one would be because I'm using the salvages, but as you can tell. Now, I'm using an Ergo Hartman hook, a 6 millimeter. And the idea with the Hartmans is you have this graduated brass. So you're going from small to medium to large. So if I do the small, I may struggle a little bit pulling it up. See that? If I go to the medium, it's not as bad. But if I go down to the biggest point of the shaft, it's easy as it can be. So there we are. So let your hook do the work. Don't struggle. And when we use the term fishing, fishing is when you do this with your wrist, and we don't want to fish. That's one thing we don't want to do. When you fish, that's how you twist all your loops. So this is Holiday Sprinkles. Next is Mr. Snowflake. And we'll put Mr. Snowflake over here so you can see it. Next to Mr. Snowman. And you see I'm using my hook, and I'm going all the way down and pulling up. And this is Mr. Snowflake. Just like that. That's Mr. Snowflake. The last one, Fields of Color, and it truly is Fields of Color, as you can tell. Fields of Color is great. If you had to do a field of flowers, if you had to run leaves, veins and leaves, if you have what we would call a primitive flower that really doesn't have much shape to it, but you wanted some pops of color in a paisley, all of those this would work for. And it just keeps coming up, and every time you hook and pull a loop, you're going to get a different color. Just like that. Just like that. So there we are. And just little bits of color here and there. So that is our Fields of Color. So we have Holiday Sprinkles, Mr. Snowflake, and Fields of Color. That is how that they hook. Next thing we're going to go over with our tools of the trade is paisley. And with the paisley, I've taken a few pieces here. Here is some paisley, and if you notice, it's shreddy. Paisley is always shreddy. It's inherent into the beast of paisley. If you don't like loose fibers, then paisley would not be for you. So here's a piece of paisley. Here's another piece of paisley. I was asked to go over this. And you see, I don't have my scissors on my scissor sitter, so I couldn't find them for a minute. I'm going to hand cut this, and you can cut it. I like to cut them in an 8 or an 8.5. And I'm just going to judge it by eye, and I'm going to cut a nice little piece. And the person that wrote in and asked about the paisley said, yours doesn't look like it frays, mine always looks like the cat got it. So here's the piece cut. That's the width of the piece. And I'm going to put my scissors there. And I'm going to grab a pencil hook. A bigger pencil hook. This is a wider pencil hook. And the pencil hook has a place for here. Now, if you're the person that overgrips your pen and you get that little knob like I do, this may not be for you. But this is a lightweight pencil hook. It is not heavy. So when I go to hook my paisley, I push in to make a very big hole. Now, you've got to make sure on this, this is the back, that's the front. I'm folding it over underneath, and I'm making sure my front's coming up. Just like that. And I'm making sure my front is coming up. I am leaving more space than you normally would. My packers in the crowd, who I won't mention any names, I promise. I'm trying to be nice. It's Christmas time. So we won't mention your names. We know who you are. You have to leave the space. If you don't leave the space, then you have the problem of it going on top of each other, and I didn't punch a big enough hole. Did you see that? So if I go down and punch a bigger hole, it comes up much easier. Now, the threads are going to come out. That's just how that works. Once in a while, the threads will come. You just snip them a little bit, just like that. But because it's folded under, just like that, you get the jeweled effect that you like from a paisley. I love this time of year to use the paisley and put it into church windows because it looks just like a stained glass window. Now you can cut it smaller, but still make sure that you fold those loose ends under. And once you start doing that, it does it automatically underneath, so you don't have to keep readjusting. But you see, now I've pulled it on the wrong side. You see all that flying? So you know you've got to readjust it and pull it onto the right side. And then there won't be the flyaways as much. Okay? On the back, I'm going to switch it to the back. Here it is on the back. There are a few little flyaways, not much. And that way, and I will pull this to the front. That I would not leave on the back. That's my last little tail to pull up. That's my end. This is my start. But there is not a lot, and when I run my hand, it's not fraying. So by doing the fold with the paisley, you don't have as many loose fibers flying around. Tighten this back up. And then when I get to the end, I just pull it up all the way, like that. And I'll trim it. And I immediately trim this when I'm done so that I can make sure I don't have too many and that these fibers do not fly too far into the other hooking. If this was a church and this was white next to the church, you'd want to get these up so the fibers don't go into the white wool. That is paisley. And like I said, yes, it is, as you can tell, very stringy, very hairy, but when it's cut wider and it's folded, you encapsulate that and it's a lot easier to hook for a great effect. The next effect that we like to use, and I've gotten a lot of questions on, is our silk dyed wool. I know that the silk and the silk dyed wool confuses people, but our silk dyed wool is silk images transferred onto white wool. This is wool. This is wool you can cut down to a number 4. You can cut it as wide as you would like. The wider you cut it, the more of the image you will get. So when you go and you hook with that, and I'm going to go into another hook here, I have this cut on a, I don't know what I cut it on. So what am I going to use? I'm going to use my strip sizer. I cut that on an 8. So I have my bent hook now. So with my bent hook, your bent hook is for people who have trouble with their shoulders, with their wrists, or their elbows. There is something called tailor's elbow that you can get from too much repetitive motion. And by doing the bent hook, you're taking all the pressure off your thumb, your wrist, your elbow, and your shoulder. So you punch it down. It is graduated, I should say that, sorry about that. It is graduated just like the other Hartmans. So whatever size you're going to pull is how we pull that. So I'm going to pop it up just like that, and then I'm going to push it in and pull it up. Notice that I'm not doing this, but it's one small motion. And this is the silk dyed wool. Now, when you're hooking with silk dyed wool, there you are, just like that. The only thing that you have to be aware of is it is a little bit slippy, it slips. It's not slick, but it slips a little bit. So when it slips, you have to hook it just a tad higher. Don't pack it, or you'll have to do the call in for packers. And I'm putting it in. So it does slip. As you can tell, when I pull one down, it does slip a little bit, but by pulling it a little bit higher, it works well. Now, somebody's going to ask, I don't know how high to hook. You should hook as high as your noodle is wide. Now, what does that mean? Here's our noodle. Here's our strip sizer. We've cut that in an 8. So now I've got to make sure by laying the strip next to that, it's as high as the noodle is wide. So when it is as high as the noodle is wide, then you know you're at the right height. So that is our silk dyed wool. It really adds a pop. I've used it inside flowers. I've used it in pomegranates. I've used it in place of paisley, the red ones, the red and blue ones. It's infinite what you can do with it. They just add a nice sheen, but they're still wool. The next tool is a very important tool. These are rug tags. We all know that we need to label our rugs. So these are labels. You would write with a Sharpie the name of the rug, who hooked it, is it your design or somebody else's, and any other pertinent information you want. Then you would cut it out. You can sew it directly onto the back of your rug, or you can heat and bond it like you would an applique to a piece of wool and then sew it on the back of your rug. These are very important. These are kind of fun. These are a little bit different. This is one strip, and we sell them the strip at a time because we want you to label your rugs. That is very important. I got back a rug that had been misappropriated from my shop, not the shop here, but the shop in Mississippi. And it was found in an antique store, and it got back to me because I had a rug tag on the back. So rug tags are very, very important. They help with lost or stolen rugs. And I think that if we don't label our rugs, how is the next generation going to know? So very, very important, rug labels. Label your rugs, no matter how big or how small. We're going to talk about, for 2 seconds, binding. Whether you whip, whether you bind like I do with the wool, when you turn the wool over to the other side, I'm so used to it, I'm pretty even all the way across. These are the magic clips. And the magic clips are from the quilting world, and they allow you to keep it even, and you adjust the clip to the size that you want. There's a quarter, a half, I think 3/8. And by adjusting the clip and clipping it, It keeps it so your binding is even. And here we go. Now this is for quilting. You can put it through a machine. But with this, you see you set it, all the different levels, 5/8, not 3/8. And then you clip it, and it holds it. It's a really good clip. And then you can put your binding on, or when you're doing your whipping as well. These are just, these clips are just what we call an extra pair of hands. They just make sure it stays even. Sometimes if you pin it, it slips. These stick where they're supposed to stick. Now if you bind with wool and you do an on the bias edging like you would a quilt, then these work just wonderfully as well. So these are called our magic clips. The next thing we're going to go over is a ball hook. The ball, this is a 9mm ball hook. And the ball hook is for people who can't grip this way. They grip it this way. Some people like to feel it in the palm of their hand, and they want to go in and out with it. I do not use a Proddy tool. We did get some questions about Proddy, about a Proddy tool. I do not use the Proddy tool. I use this instrument here to Proddy with. So to Proddy, which is a dimension into rug hooking, we're going to cut a piece, and I'll show you the shape that we use to Proddy with. So I'm going to cut a petal out of this wool, okay, like that. And I'm going to show you the most important piece when you cut. So we're cutting here, and I'm going to cut in just like that, so that when it's done, it looks like a pair of sunglasses, a bikini top, I guess, if you are into that. Just like that, okay? If this is too thick, the Proddy doesn't work. That was one of the questions, that you couldn't get the Proddy up. This has to be thin, but not too thin to flop. And if you put a holding line, you hook a holding line, then Proddy next to it, that will help. So I'm going to punch with this a big hole. Look at that hole. So I'm using the biggest part of the shaft so I don't stress the wool. I'm pulling it up. And then I'm going to pull up, and I'm going to leave 2 threads and pull in another hole. And as you will see, they stand up perfectly. The next one, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to leave 2 threads, punch in, pull up. Then I'm going to pull up to where the cross piece is, and then I'm going to pull in. And if you notice, they stand up nice when you have the hooking. It doesn't have to be this high, but it can be a little bit lower and a little bit smaller, but they do stand up nicely. Also, another question was, after it's cut and up, you can trim it. Like that's a little square. I'm going to even that up a little bit. And so once they're cut and up, you can trim it. But unlike your bangs, this does not grow back, so be careful how much you trim it. So again, I'll go over it one more time. This is how you fold it, like that. And you can have a template, or you can pin a pattern to it. I'm just doing this freehand. And I'm going to cut this up like that. I'm going to come back around. But when I come back around, I'm going to make sure that I cut this in. And by cutting it in, I've created that little bow tie look. Okay. So now my next row, I'm going to count 1, 2 over, and I'm going to punch a big hole, just like that. And I'm going to come up to where that little thin piece is, and then I'm coming up on the other side. And that's my next row, like that. And if I was to put one more right there, or if you're going to hook your center would stand it up. Now we can try it one more time if you'd like. I think we have one more left in us here, and we'll put one right in there. go. And then there we go. And there's that hole. So now I'm going to come and I'm going to put one right here like this, 2 over, pull it up, and I'm going to come at an angle over here, pull it up, and we're there. So there's the Proddy. I hope that answered your questions. If not, ask away and I'll be happy to help. I do want to go over some of the hooks that we have. I know everybody always asks about the hooks. So these are the pencil hooks. This is for our wider cuts, and if you're more comfortable holding a pencil hook and you want to Proddy with it, you would use this part of the shank. So this is our largest one. This is the medium, and this has a more defined piece for your fingers, as you can tell. And then this is for your smaller cuts. Now these are very, very lightweight. They're like nothing in your hand, so you can hook for hours with that. So that is our pencil hooks. We've gone over the ball hook. The ball hook comes in 2 levels. It comes a long shank, and then we also have one in a short shank. So the short shank would only be right to here. Short shanks, we have these made into short shanks, so it's a quicker in and out for people who struggle pulling loops. But this is a typical ball. Now, a short shank, here are short shanks. These are ergo. Ergo means your thumb goes here, but the shank is short. This is an ergo large, primitive, and this is a medium. And as you can tell, there you go. You don't get as much as the graduation of the tip, but you do punch in and out. And I'm going to show you what we mean. So if I want to punch in and out, you go much quicker, and there's no fishing. You have less of a shank, so it's more of a deliberate in and out, in and out. So that works for that. Now, people always ask about spacing. How I space, I do not count spaces. If you come in the class and want to count little squares in between, we make you go sit in the parking lot. And this time of year, it's a little cold to be sitting in the parking lot. So what you do is you slide down this loop and punch in, and you pull up and over. That sets your distance and your height in one motion. And you can talk to yourself until you get a rhythm with it. So you go down and up and over. Punch it down, up and over. And that's how you set the distance and the height in one motion. So there's that. And this is your short shank. We've gone over the bent hooks. The bent hooks come in many different sizes, as you can tell. The bent hooks, we have everything from the fine to the larger cuts, and these are for your smaller cuts. Now for those that really like a heavy, want to feel the hook in their hand, this is the hook. It's a heavy hook. It's a heavier hook in your hand for people or men who have bigger hands, women who have bigger hands. You can really hold on to it. You can hook with it. If this is the motion you like to hook with, then this would be the hook for you. Again, a short shank. This is an ergo hook, but this is for 2, 3, 4 cuts. It's for the much smaller cuts. This is a 4 cut, as we ascertained before. So now I'm going to put in a little bit of a 4 cut, and I'm going to come right in here. So when you go in, you come in like that and you pull it up. If you are using monk's cloth, it separates the threads. This happens to be linen, our unbleached linen. And there we go. Just like that. Just like that. So as you can tell, this is a 4 cut. It's not splitting it. It's doing a nice job with it. and pulling it right up. So that's what we use for our smaller cuts in the ergo. And there it is in the bent. Now we're going to get to our next piece. And this is a normie. Now normies come in medium and fine. And I love to use the normie for when I'm going to add in my special fibers. For example, if we're going to use glitter thread, if we are going to use patent leather thread into our hooking, this will allow us to do that in between. So here's our glitter thread to add some snow or some glitter or a little glint. And if you want to get in between, just say we're going to add it into this. You need to add it to pull in the detail. Now, some people hook with the normie all the time. And I think I have too many pieces down here. We'll push it over here. Too many tails hanging. I'm grabbing the wrong thing. There we are. There we go. So I've got my tail up. So now I'm going to put it on the hook. And because it's such a U-shaped hook, it's a real U-shaped as opposed to the other angle of the Hartman, you can put it in between and pull it down or pull it up as high as you like and go like that with it. And then the glitter comes right on through. And you can just see the glitter, a little bit of the thread, but this allows you to separate the loops and to get down underneath. And we always put our glitter thread in last because you have to steam it first. The glitter thread is acrylic and it does melt, and it also does stink, by the way. And how do I know that? I've burnt some glitter thread in my time. So there we are. There's your glitter thread. And the glitter thread comes in many different colors. Somebody had asked that question. We have a nice green, nice black, and we do have gold and other colors that aren't in this one, but we do have other colors, so you can add it in. It's not just for snow. You can add it in whatever you would like. The next thing that we're going to go over are the sterling hooks. I've been asked about the sterling hooks. These are a sampling of the sterling hooks. Not all sterling hooks are meant for wide cuts, and these are the old deco hooks. So when you're looking at these are from vintage pieces. They're set and made properly. You have to make sure when you purchase one that you know what size it's going to hook. This obviously will not pull an 8. You could probably go up to a 5. So you don't want to stress, since this is a vintage piece and this is set in, you don't want to stress this too much. You want to make sure that the hook that you buy is for what you're going to pull through. So this would work for a 4. So we'll pull up a little bit of a 4. And I'll show you what I mean. This is very light. It happens to be Bakelite. And you see it will pull up fine. But if I were to go to this and I pull it, see how I'm pulling this? That is not good because this is a vintage top. You don't want to stress it. You want a pretty hook. You want to keep your pretty hook. This pulls much easier. So be cognizant when you're buying these what size you pull. So this would be a 5 max. Now this one is a size larger. Okay, this has a little more sturdy. This is a sterling handle, so you could go to a 6. You could pull a 6, possibly an 8, but you see the minute I put it in with the 8, I'm struggling. See that? It doesn't have a big enough hole. You don't want to, because this is again a vintage piece when you have these, and you don't want to put the stress because this is where it will wear first. So if this is what you're pulling, this may be the size for you, or this may be the size for you. So make sure, even when you're buying the pretty hooks, that you buy the appropriate size. And yes, we all like to have a cachet of pretty hooks, but make sure it's for what you're going to use. And you see the ease with which this pulls up the 8. Okay? So you have to take into consideration, when you're buying these vintage-inspired hooks, what size you're going to cut. So you want to keep it for as long as you can, and that's the truth. So there we are. Okay? I think I've gone over the normie, and I think that's about it for the tools of the trade. This is a great basket. It's got the magnet to hold everything. You should always keep yourself contained, your tools contained, particularly when you're at a hook-in, so you can keep everything all in one. If you have any questions, ask away. I'll be happy to answer them. I hope you've enjoyed our tools of the trade. And from W. Cushing and Rug Hooking Magazine, who made this all possible, I want to wish you and your family a safe and happy holidays. Thanks. We'll see you in the new year. Bye-bye.